I was 51 years old, 26 years in law enforcement, the last 14 as a detective sergeant with the Harris County Sheriff's Office, and I had finally bought the one place on earth I thought nobody could touch. A 1968 red brick ranch on one quiet acre at the end of Pecan Hollow Lane, just outside Katy, Texas. No sidewalks, no streetlights, no HOA covenants, no architectural review board telling me I couldn't hang a Texans flag or park my boat in the driveway. The title company laughed when I asked if there was any chance the neighbors could claim jurisdiction. Sergeant Callahan, the closer, said, slapping the folder shut, that parcel has sat outside every subdivision line since Lyndon Johnson was president. You could paint the house purple, raise peacocks, and run a barbecue joint out of the garage, and nobody could write you a ticket. I closed on March 31st, moved in April 2nd, and spent the first week sleeping better than I had since Desert Storm. No pager at 3 a.m., no dead bodies in drainage ditches, just mourning doves at dawn, and the smell of fresh-cut St. Augustine when the sprinklers kicked on. Then came Saturday, May 3rd, 2024. I was on the front porch in sweatpants and house shoes, third cup of coffee going cold, watching the sun burn the dew off the lawn, when a silver Lexus GX 460 pulled square into my driveway like it had a reserved sign. A woman got out. 53, maybe 54, blonde bob sharp enough to slice bread, navy blazer in 90-degree heat, clipboard thick as the Houston phone book. She marched up the walk with the posture of a process server who had never once lost a case. Mr. Russell Callahan, she called before she reached the steps. That's me. She stopped 10 feet away, close enough for me to read the gold nameplate on her blazer. Diane Whitaker, Vice President, Oak Haven Property Owners Association. Your property is in serious violation of multiple community standards, she began, flipping pages like she was reading indictments in open court. Front yard live oak exceeds maximum allowable height of 5 feet by approximately 9 feet. Mailbox is non-compliant black instead of approved oil-rubbed bronze. Exterior trim is Sherwin-Williams agreeable gray instead of the mandatory Dorian gray. Exterior light fixtures exceed maximum wattage. You have 48 hours to correct these items or fines will commence at $500 per day, compounding weekly, with lien rights after 30 days. I let her finish. I have spent half my adult life letting people talk themselves into corners they can't climb out of. When the last syllable left her mouth, I took a slow sip of coffee, set the mug on the rail, and spoke calm enough to calm a drunk holding a knife to his own throat. Diane, this house was built in 1968. It has never been inside Oak Haven's boundaries. Not when Nixon was president, not when Obama was president, and not today. I have the original recorded plat map, the deed of trust, the tax rolls, a letter from the Harris County Appraisal District, and a personal note from the county clerk that says this parcel is exempt in perpetuity. Would you like to see them? I stepped inside, came back with the fire-safe folder I kept next to my will and my grandfather's war medals, and handed her the highlighted copies. She glanced at the pages for maybe 3 seconds total. That was before the municipal boundary adjustment of 2023, she said without hesitation. The city council passed emergency zoning ordinances that incorporated previously independent parcels into existing HOA frameworks for public safety, aesthetic continuity, and drainage uniformity. It's all perfectly legal and fully recorded. I have heard smoother lies from serial killers who still claim they were innocent on death row. Show me the ordinance number, the public hearing notice, the agenda posting, the certified mail receipt proving I was notified, and the signature page where I consented. Because Texas Property Code Chapter 204 and 209 say you can't annex private property without the owner's written consent, and I sure as hell never signed anything. For the first time, her eyes flicked past me into the house. She took in the living room layout, the open kitchen beyond, the hallway to the master, the staircase rising on the left, the exact distance from the front door to the back door, the sight lines from every window. It lasted less than 2 seconds, but I have spent 26 years learning to read intent in a glance. That wasn't curiosity. That was a site survey. I'll have the documentation delivered through proper channels, she said, already backing toward her car. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you start trimming that tree. She drove off. I added the first entry to a fresh legal pad on the kitchen counter. May 3rd, 2024, 7:42, Diane Whitaker appeared unannounced, cited fictitious violations, claimed municipal annexation without documentation. Noted prolonged visual assessment of interior floor plan. Ring video saved. Duration of visit, for minutes 11 seconds. I thought that might be the end of it. It was only the overture. She came back every single day for the next 11 days straight. Sometimes at 7:30 a.m., with coffee still in her hand, sometimes at 3:15 p.m., when the school buses were running, once at 11:07 p.m., under the pretense of checking exterior lighting standards after dark. The violations grew baroque, a garden gnome that might be considered an unapproved statue, a bird bath that exceeded maximum water feature volume, a single dandelion within 20 feet of the property line that apparently constituted a blight on the entire subdivision, a flagpole that was 1 inch too tall, a driveway oil spot that had appeared after I changed the truck's oil myself. Each time she positioned herself to get a longer, clearer view inside the house. Each time I met her at the door, let her recite her scripture, wrote down every word verbatim, and watched the red light on the 6 new Ring cameras blink like it was enjoying the performance. On the 8th day, my next-door neighbor, Ruth Ellenberg, 78 years old, Army nurse in Vietnam, sharp as a scalpel and twice as tough, Walked over while Diane was measuring my mailbox with a metal tape measure accurate to the 32nd of an inch. "Russell, you be careful with that one," Ruth said after Diane left. "They did this exact same dance to the Millers on Dogwood Court 2 years ago. Find them into the ground over a fence stain nobody had ever complained about before. Then suddenly the city found code violations nobody had ever heard of, setback issues, drainage problems, electrical boxes that were suddenly non-compliant. House sold 6 months later for $75,000 under market. Guess who the buyer was? Diane's brother-in-law, Ronald Whitaker, through some Delaware LLC nobody can trace. Same thing happened to the Petersons, the Garcias, and the Nguyen's. For families in 5 years. All gone. All sold cheap." Ruth lowered her voice until it was barely above the cicadas. "And Russell? Every one of them got a visit from Diane Whitaker with that same clipboard and that same smile right before the fine started. That night, I changed every lock in the house, schlag deadbolts, key-to-like, installed 8 cameras total, for exterior, 2 interior, 2 in the garage, motion lights bright enough to land a helicopter, and started sleeping with my duty Glock 22 on the nightstand again. Old habits die hard when you smell a setup. Diane figured out my routine fast. I left for the precinct at 7:45 sharp every morning, home between 6:15 and 7 o'clock unless a case ran long. She started showing up at 8:15 like clockwork, walking the perimeter, taking photographs with a real DSLR, timing how long my Tahoe stayed gone. Once I caught her parked 2 houses down with actual binoculars and a notebook. I waved. She drove off. On the evening of May 14th, she knocked again. This time her tone was almost friendly, like we were old pals catching up. "Russell, I'm concerned. Several residents have reported odd noises from your property after hours. Vehicles coming and going at strange times. Packages left on the porch that sit for days. We're just trying to keep the neighborhood safe." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me so she couldn't see inside. "Diane, you've been watching my house for 2 weeks solid. You know exactly when I come and go, what packages I get, and what time I take the trash to the curb. Cut the crap." Her smile never wavered. Safety is everyone's responsibility. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the dark living room with the lights off, service weapon on the coffee table, body cam charging on the counter, and waited. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the backyard camera. Diane and another woman I recognized as the HOA treasurer were at my back fence with bolt cutters and a can of survey paint. I watched them work for 37 seconds, then dialed 911 myself. By the time deputies arrived, they had vanished, but they left behind a perfectly cut 4-foot section of chain link, 2 cans of orange survey paint, and 4 wooden survey stakes driven into my grass with ribbon that read Whitaker Development LLC, property line adjustment pending. I filed the report, collected the evidence, bagged the stakes and the paint cans, and went back to bed. Sleep never came. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 8 years, parked my unmarked Tahoe 2 streets over at Ruth's house. She was delighted to be part of the operation, and waited in the garage with a fresh pot of coffee, a laptop showing all 8 camera feeds, and a fully charged body cam clipped to my shirt. At 7:45, I walked out in my suit like any other weekday, got in the truck, drove around the block twice, and slipped back through the side gate into the garage. Diane never saw me. She was parked half a block down, watching the house through binoculars again, sipping Whataburger coffee like she was on stakeout. At 8:02, her Lexus pulled away. I smiled for the first time in weeks. At 8:07, she called 911. I heard it live on the police scanner app, one keep on my phone for exactly these kinds of mornings. 911, what is your emergency? I need officers right now. I'm at 1821, Pecan Hollow Lane. My neighbor's house, I just heard a woman screaming for help, then crashing sounds, like someone's being attacked. Please hurry. It sounds like she's being hurt bad. The address she gave was mine. Units were dispatched within 30 seconds. I watched on camera as Diane positioned herself on the sidewalk in front of my house, phone to her ear, performing panic like an Academy Award was on the line. 2 patrol units arrived in 6 minutes, 41 seconds. Officers Ramirez and Sean, both of whom I had trained at the academy. I stayed in the garage and listened on the scanner as Diane fed them the story about screams and breaking furniture. She produced an old quickset key from her purse. The HOA keeps emergency access keys for situations exactly like this. The previous owners never changed the locks. We have to get inside. I waited until I heard the key turn in the front door lock and Ramirez's voice on the radio. Entering for welfare check. Then I stepped out of the garage in full Class A uniform, badge gleaming, service weapon on my hip, body cam recording, and walked around to the front yard like I was reporting for roll call. Diane had her back to me, guiding the officers across the threshold. She was already inside my living room, one hand in her purse, when I spoke. "Afternoon, folks. Mind telling me why you're in my house?" Every head snapped toward me. Ramirez's eyes went wide. "Sergeant Callahan?" "That would be me," I said, stepping inside. "And this is my residence. I'd like to know who gave permission for a welfare check when I've been home all morning watching the whole show on 8 cameras." Diane froze halfway across my rug, mouth open, key still in her right hand, left hand clutching a small plastic evidence bag with a single white pill and a forged Metro PD evidence sticker visible inside. Chin looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Diane tried one last time, voice cracking. I heard screaming. I was concerned for safety. I held up my phone showing the live feed from the 4 interior cameras plus the body cam feed, now recording her in glorious 4K. Funny. These cameras have been recording since 6 a.m. Not a single scream. Not a single crash. Just you letting yourself in with a key you have no right to possess, and that bag in your hand that sure looks like planted evidence to me. I stepped closer. Diane Whitaker, you are under arrest for criminal trespass, burglary of a habitation, filing a false police report, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to commit same. Turn around. She didn't move. The color drained completely from her face when I pulled out my cuffs. You can't arrest me. I'm the vice president of. I can and I am. You have the right to remain silent. Ramirez and Chin stood aside and let me do it. I had 26 years on the job, 3 commendations for arrests under stressful conditions, and a reputation for never losing a case once I put cuffs on someone. They knew whose collar this was. By the time the backup units arrived, half the block was in their robes watching from their lawns. Word travels fast when the HOA queen gets cuffed on a detective sergeant's doorstep in front of 8 running cameras. Diane sat in the back of my unmarked Tahoe and started talking the second I shut the door. It wasn't just me. Gerald Patterson, the president, he's the one who planned everything. We've done this 11 times in 6 years. We make life hell, plant evidence if we have to, force people to sell cheap. His brother-in-law Ronald flips the houses through LLCs in Delaware and the Caymans. I can give you names, dates, bank records, everything. I hit record on my body cam. Keep talking. She did. For 51 minutes, she sang like a choir on Easter Sunday. 11 families. For $0.8 million in forced sales. Forged city ordinances, fake complaints, midnight break-ins, planted drugs, staged domestic violence calls, bribed code inspectors, threats of foreclosure, the works. All of it. Gerald Patterson was in cuffs before lunch. Ronald Whitaker made it until 4:17 p.m. when the warrant hit his real estate office downtown, and he tried to run out the back door into the arms of 2 waiting SWAT officers. 6 months later, the sentencing hearing filled the largest courtroom in Harris County. Victims sat shoulder to shoulder with reporters from 3 networks and a documentary crew from Netflix. Diane got 14 years day for day. Gerald drew 36 federal years for RICO violations, interstate wire fraud, and witness intimidation. Ronald took a plea for 21. The judge ordered restitution. Every family got their house back at the original purchase price plus 30%, or full current market value plus damages if they had already moved. Total payout came to $9,200,000, paid out of seized assets, the HOA's secretly overfunded insurance policy, and Gerald's offshore accounts that the forensic accountants found in the Caymans. The Oak Haven HOA was dissolved by court order. The county redrew the subdivision map and stamped my deed with a permanent note in bold red. Property exempt from all homeowners associations in perpetuity. Harris County Court Order 2024, CV 11847. They even laminated it. On a Saturday in November, I stood in my front yard trimming the live oak Diane had once threatened to have removed. It was 11 feet tall now and growing strong. Ruth brought over a pan of banana pudding and 2 folding chairs, and we sat on the porch watching kids ride bikes without worrying about some clipboard tyrant measuring their training wheels. My captain called that afternoon with news of a promotion to lieutenant and a new assignment, heading up a multi-agency task force on HOA fraud and racketeering across the state of Texas. Turns out my little street wasn't the only one with stories. We've already opened 37 new investigations and recovered 11 properties. I still keep the original key Diane used that morning. It hangs on a nail in the garage next to the clipped section of chain link fence, the 4 survey stakes with Whitaker Development LLC printed on the ribbon, and the forged evidence bag now sealed in an official property envelope marked case 2024-05187, evidence. Every now and then a new neighbor will ask about the display. I just smile and say it's a reminder that real power doesn't need a blazer and a clipboard. It wears a badge, knows the law, and never blinks. Now I want to hear from you. When does looking out for the neighborhood become organized crime? At what point does a busybody with a rulebook cross the line into felony conspiracy and racketeering? Have you ever watched someone hide behind community standards to bully, intimidate, and steal from their neighbors? Did you fight back? Did you move? Or did you keep quiet and hope they pick someone else? I'm 51 years old. I've got time, and I read every single comment. Tell me your story. Tell me exactly where you draw the line.